Hello, welcome to Indie Tutorials. My name is Guillermo and I would like to thank the Patreon supporting this channel. Hello everyone, this is Guillermo speaking, and today we are gonna look at making the response state and add visual effects when we spawn into the scene. So first thing first, we need to go to our script folders and gameplay, behaviors, characters, states, and add a new state script. So let's create new C# script and let's call this one RespawnState. Let Unity compile and open the script in Visual Studio. So once open, we need to change mono behavior for character state. We need to add the Animancer namespace and add a serialized field for our animation clip. In the awake method, we want to register the event when our respawn animation ended on end, and when that happened we want to call in our character state machine the default, or force the default state. You remember that we set it to be the idle animation. So the reason for that is we want to play this respawn animation just once and transition right away to the idle animation. Then in the awake we call our character state machine and we try to set this state. Try set state and we pass this character state. Okay. Then on the on enter, let's on enter on enter state, we want to play this main animation. So let's call character Animancer component, sorry, play the main animation clip. And of course we need to override the can exit state, and we don't want to exit this state unless we finish the animation. Okay, so that will be it. Let's save the script. Let's go back to Unity, let it compile. Now we need to go to our player prefab. Let's open up the prefab. Let's select our states game object and add our new respawn state. Then we need to assign the character, so let's just drag the main player game object, and we need to add this animation clip. Right, so I have already imported one. I have this respawn animation, so I will add it here and I will set it to end at 66 seconds. There we go. So let's take a look at the animation itself. So it's just an animation that transitions from kneel to stand up. Okay, you can get similar animation from Mixamo or the Unity Asset Store. There we go. Okay, so we have our respawn state with the animation clip. So now we need how to call this state, right? So let's go to the player game object, and here in the character script we are going to add a new slot for this new movement or new state, sorry. So let's edit the script. Let's revisit the script, and here above the character idle state, let's add a new serialized field for our respawn animation, and let's create a public accessor in case we need it. Okay, so the only thing that we need to do now is scroll down in here in the awake method. Right before we set the default state to idle, we need to set the state machine default state is going to be our respawn state. So basically this will start in the respawn state if we have a clip to it, but actually the actual state is going to be the idle state, right? So let's save the script. Now we need let it Unity compile, and here we need to add the new state. So we have here the respawn slot. So let's take the states game object and drag it on top of the respawn, and I get this option to select which of these game objects that inherit from character state I want to choose from, and I get this nice feature because I'm using the Inspector Gadgets asset product, which is also a product from the Cybernetic, the creator of Animancer. So I can choose RespawnState in this case. Let's go back to our scene and let's give it a try. So let's make more room here and click or select Ctrl P to start play mode, and here we go. Let's try again, having the mouse in the right position. Nice. Okay, so the next step is to add visual effects and audio clip sound effects to this respawn state animation. For that you need beforehand an audio clip for the sound that we want to play and a visual effect. So I have already imported those that I'm going to use here. For the audio I have here in my folder audio sound effects, I have this warp loop or sound, sorry. So if I click on play to listen to the sound, and I have imported in my visual effects prefabs visual effects this effect that I got from the asset store, the crypto visual effects. So if I open this prefab, you can see that it's just a nice effect that has a set of fog effects. And the important thing that you need to make sure is that your visual effect is not looping, so it will end at some point. In this case the duration is 5 seconds, which is good enough for the animation stand up that we have. So after having those, let's go to our schematic. So let me find it here, schematic, and we have this SpawnPlayerSchematic. So let's open up. Let's click on edit schematic, and before doing anything here, I want to go to base control, and from here we have, let me check, base control, game, sorry, no, this is game section, and then from here we have the audio settings, and we can initialize or get a pool of a number of sound channels. So because this is going to be heavily sound driven game as well, we could just start this or let ORK to initialize up to, let's say, 3 for now sound channels. This will add three audio sources to the Machinum per system game object for us, and we can leave everything as it is, but what we need to do is set an index for each one. So the first one, of course, is 0, this is going to be 1, and this is going to be 2. Let's save the settings. Now we can go to our schematic, and from here let me move everything to the side to make more room. In the general settings of this schematic, we have here this section for prefabs and audio clips. So let's start by adding our prefab that we want to spawn with a visual effect. So let's create add prefab resource. Let me make some room, and let's go to our prefab folder, or the folder that you had your prefab of the visual effects, and drag it up. Okay, I'm going to leave checked the use pooling because I want to the system be able to reuse this effect other times without having to instantiate this game object for performance sake. After setting up the visual effect, we want to click on the audio clips, and we want to add a new clip resource. So it is asking us for an audio clip here, so let's go to our sound effects folder and select the sound that you want to play, and that's it. So let's go now to the canvas, and after we join the group, the player joins the active group in the game. Let me click this setting here. After we join the active group, we want to spawn the prefab. So let's right click and start typing spawn and select spawn prefab. Let's bind it or link it, and in the spawn prefab options we can select, or is pre-selected for us, the prefab that we want to spawn. We want to keep a reference because we want to destroy it afterwards, so we need to keep a reference to it. We want to use the prefab rotation, but the target type is, in this case, is going to be the spawn point that we have in the scene, and the ID of this spawn point is already 0. We could add another spawn point, but just let's reuse the one we have already. Okay, so after spawning the prefab with the visual effect, we want to play our sound clip. So let's add a new node and I start typing play sound, and let's select play sound channel, link the nodes, and in the play sound channel we want to select the SFX warp, or your audio clip is going to be played in the sound channel 0, and when the play sound starts we want to set the volume to 0, and after we initialize this play or this sound clip. We want to transition or to fade from 0 to 0.4 in the volume, otherwise it will be too loud. So let's add a change sound volume node. So let's start typing change sound. There we go. Let's link it up. And from here the change type is going to be fade. So we want to fade from 0 to 0.4 in the volume and with a duration of 2 seconds, let's say. After we start playing the audio clip, we actually can spawn the ORK player, but let's add a wait. So again, a new node, type wait, link it up, the nodes, and here let's wait, let's say 3 seconds. After the wait, we can actually spawn the player, and after spawning the player we need to destroy the visual effect prefab, because we are using the pooling system. Is not going to actually destroy the game object, but recall it for the pool system to be reused later on. Alright, so right click and start typing destroy prefab, not destroy object, destroy prefab, and let's link it up. And the options we have here is to set which the ID of the prefab that we want to destroy. Of course, in this case, if we see the documentation or the help here, it states that it will just disable the game object to be reused if we are using pooling. And in this case, -1 means all the prefabs that are set in the settings. In this case, well, we have just one, so we can safely set it to 0, the first prefab we have, and we want to destroy it after 4 seconds. Remember that the visual effect is set to stop after 5 seconds, so yeah, just giving a buffer of a couple of seconds more to let it end properly, right? And now the last thing is to destroy or stop the sound that is playing. So for that we can, since we are fading from 0 to 0.4, we can do the opposite. So let's just duplicate this node, link it up. So in this case we want to fade to 0 with 1 second of duration for the fade, and after that we want to stop the sound. So let's right click and select stop sound with channel, link this up, and the channel that we want to stop is the sound channel 0 index. So let's save our schematic and let's go back to Unity. So before testing out, I forgot here in the change sound volume, so click on that node. We need to set the use channel, so we have it that way. So let's select use channel and of course set the index of the channel that we want to apply this transition, this fade. And in the change sound volume back, when we set it to go to 0, we want to wait until the fade is done, right, to actually stop the sound. So let's save the schematic. Now we can close up the ORK Framework editor and again make a little bit of room, and let's hit play. Pretty nice, right? Okay, so The next what we want to do is to avoid the player to actually have control of the character. So if we were to play this one and I started to spam the W key to go forward, you can see that I'm actually moving away of the visual effect. So to avoid that, we want to block the controls of the player. So let's open up ORK Framework editor. So we can use the Ctrl-Alt-M shortcut from the keyboard, or just go Window, Game is Love, Machinum. And if we go to Base Control, we have several sections, subsections here, or settings, base key settings, interaction, player settings, or control settings. But we want to go to the player settings. And from here, we can add custom controls. So actually, let's go to ORK control settings first. And if we scroll down, we see that it is expecting us to use the out-of-the-box control for the player. So we need to select this one and choose it none. And same for the camera controls. So let's select none. And after that, we can scroll up or click on player settings to go to this subsection. And from here we want to add our Cinemachine wrapper and our character movement, or let's say the input manager that is actually driving the movement of or telling the player where to go or if should move or not. So let's click on add custom control, and let's start by the camera. So let's select blocked by camera and placed on the camera game object, and the class name is going to be the ORK Cinemachine camera control wrapper. And let's save the settings. And the next one is going to be, so let's create or add a new add custom control. This is going to be blocked by the player and place. We have the option to select camera, game and player. Game is going to be the persistent Machinum game object, and this leads us to some sort of problem, because we had in the scene, if I just drag a little bit to the side, we have our input manager living in its own game object. So currently this is the one that we want to let ORK disable when we block the player. And well, the easiest way to I found it is to just remove this component from this game object and place it in the player itself. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is select the input listener component. I will select copy component, then I go to the player prefab that is disabled. I will enable it for a second, then I will add the new component as new, base component as new, so it will keep our reference to our scriptable event that we created earlier. And then we can override and apply this change to the prefab. After doing that, I can disable it again. And in the input manager, it is safe to just disable it or delete it altogether. But before doing that, we can go back here in the control behavior when we set place on player, and then we need to select the class name is going to be input listener component. And let's save the settings. After doing that, we can go back to the schematics and select our player schematic, and in the settings of the schematic we have this option for control blocks, and we can block player control. Save the schematic. Let's go back to Unity. We can disable the input manager to leave it for a bit here, but we need to revisit this script because you remember we set it to don't destroy and load. So let's just comment it out, this line of code. So let's edit the script, and in the awake method let's comment it out, the don't destroy and load. So when ORK Framework disables the script, it will unregister from the event from the input system, and that's what we want. And on contrary, when it enable it back, it will register back the events. So let's save the changes in the script and let's go back to Unity. Okay, so let me drag this a little bit down, and if we were to play or set to play mode, and I will pause it right away. So let's take a look. We have in the don't destroy and load, we have the Machinum persistent object. We have our 3 channels that we set up, and the sound channel is playing the warp animation. Is set the volume to 0.4. Then we have our visual effect. So let's continue. The player is spawned, and we have the current state it is, so it is in the response state, and we have the input listener, which is disabled. This is what we wanted. Now it's enabled because the state machine ended, and we can control the character once again. So that's it for today. Hope you learn and like the series, and thank you for supporting the channel. See you on the next one.